So we are on page 83, at the top, number 67. We talked about low masses, which are not strictly private. More than 2 candles are permitted, for example, at the parish or community mass. So, see, canon law says you have to, where possible, obviously, have a solemn mass in a parish church, 1 solemn mass per Sunday. That's canon law. So if that's impossible, you can consider one of those masses that you're saying, or the single mass that you're saying, as the parish mass that has some solemnity to it, even though it's a low mass. And so you can, therefore, it says more than 2 candles are permitted. So it could be, you could put 12 up. On feast days, so big feast days, if you're having just a low mass, which happens a lot, or as the occasion calls for more than usual solemnity, such as a first communion or some other thing. It's pretty general, so it's not so strict. So you can use judgment. The use of the Sanctus candle, it's also known as the elevation candle or consecration candle. That sort of went out of use. It was a candle that was affixed to the wall over on the gospel side, the epistle side, and at the Sanctus, the altar boy would go over and light it. And then after the communion verse, he would extinguish it. So it meant that it was the more solemn part of the Mass. And to alert people to that fact. Its use would really be in a large church but I think people are more liturgically savvy today and would know that with the Sanctus, you're entering into the more solemn part of the Mass. So it really, Bishop Dolan used to have a Sanctus candle, but I don't know. It's nothing wrong with it. It's just it sort of has fallen out of use. It's prescribed by the rubrics. It is not obligatory in places where custom to the contrary exists. All right, so that would be. I remember seeing it in some churches when I was young, which is ages ago.
Yeah. I know they still use it in Austria. I learned that from Father Trauner.
Yeah, it could be the custom. Since the object of the Sanctus candle is to remind the faithful of the solemn part of the Mass, it should be placed within their view, so many times it cannot be seen. Its place is on the epistle side of the altar, but not on the altar. It may be set into a bracket on the wall or into a candlestick placed on the altar step. That means the gradine. It is to be lighted at the Sanctus and extinguished after the Communio. Communion verse. It is fitting that the candles be blessed. And that's a reference to Wappelhorst. That's an American 19th century liturgy book. It's good. It's not great, but it's good. Martinucci, Moretti, and van der Stappen are your big ones. He was the master of ceremonies for Pius IX, Martinucci. That's really your standard, the ultimate source. Moretti is also very good. I think he's 5 volumes. And then van der Stappen. You should get your hands on those. They're all in Latin. Oh, and then there's French. He's also very good. It's in French, though. Yeah. Sturkey. But there's another one. That's the same. Sturkey, either Hagee revised Sturkey or Sturkey revised Hagee, but it's Sturkey Hagee, but I forget, it's another one, starts with a B, I think. But you should have those. And then the usual, I mean, for the rubrics for saying Mass, the best is O'Connell, the English O'Connell. There's an American O'Connell too, who isn't bad, but the English O'Connell, that's a 3-volume set. I think there is a 1-volume though, I'm not too sure, but don't confuse him with the American O'Connell. He's good too, but the English O'Connell is excellent for learning how to say Mass. He is so detailed, he tells you everything. All the do's and don'ts. All right, anyway. Ordinarily, the candles should be of white wax. The candles used at Requiem Masses on Good Friday and during Advent and Lent are made of common wax. They have a yellow or slightly reddish color. So, yes.
When it says the candles should be blessed, does that refer to all of them? Sanctus candles? And
it is fitting. In other words, it's nice.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to.
What about the sanctuary lamp?
We're going to get to that. I think that is blessed. But that, most of them talk about oil for that, though. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Your Excellency, about the Advent and Lent, on page 79, and I've read this too, that the yellow candles are only for Holy Week.
Yeah, that is very blurry. Yeah. It's mostly authors. I mean, some of them say this, some of them say just that, some of them, you know, it's a little fluid, you might say. There's a lot of custom. The order to be observed in lighting candles on the altar, I think most people know this, is as follows. Begin on the epistle side and light first the highest candle, that means the one closest to the tabernacle or crucifix. Then those standing next in the same line. Observe the same order for other rows of candles which stand on a lower level. So you do all of the candles on one side first. After the candles on the epistle side have been lighted, descend the steps at the side, pass around the front of the altar. So you don't go you go the long way, that means. Genuflect on the floor, go around to the gospel side, ascend the steps, and light the candles in the same order as mentioned above. In extinguishing the candles, reverse the order, beginning with the highest candle farthest from the crucifix on the gospel side. So I think sacristans probably know that. Okay. The use of 2 torches carried by acolytes is permitted during... that's bad. Mass. It's a computer. From the canon to the communion. This is allowed when the low mass is a parochial or community mass. So you can do that at low mass. And if it's a parish mass or a quasi-parish mass, or on special occasions for the sake of more solemnity. So you could do that at low mass. It says 2. Now, customarily at high mass you have 6. But you could do 4. I mean, you could do 2 at high mass, depending on if the altar boys are sick or something. They typically faint. You always have casualties among they're usually the little kids, the torchbearers. It's like being private in the army. First you start with being torchbearer, and one always will conk out. You know, you see first first this stuff, and then he walks out, and then you have 5. And what do you do with 5? At least one will conk out. You might get dizzy. he might get sick to his stomach. So you have to watch it. If you're an MC, watch it, see if they start to go wobbly.
Your Excellency.
Yeah.
Were you ever a torchbearer as a young boy?
No.
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 Your parish, was it mainly low masses?
No, it did it had a high mass at 11 o'clock. I mean, we had probably between upstairs and downstairs 10 masses on Sunday. There were 5,000 families.
Mm. So you probably didn't get much opportunity to serve as a young boy, or you did?
I never did, as a matter of fact. My brother was a server, and he said, it's really hard. And the Latin is terrible. He gave me this whole picture, so I said, I don't want to be an altar boy because it's too hard. Yeah.
There were 5,000 families. What would you do during Holy Week when there's only one mass on?
It was packed. Yeah, packed. Yeah, there's a lot of people. So, the use of electric, gas, or oil lights on the altar is forbidden. The sanctuary light, consult your diocesan regulations. That's what the book says. That's the regulations. The candlesticks may be made of gold, silver, brass, copper, or wood. If you had gold candlesticks, they would weigh a ton. If they are made of wood, it is fitting that they be overlaid with silver or gold. On feast days, the candlestick should be of better material and of greater height than on ordinary days. Silver candlesticks should not be used on Good Friday.
Doesn't mention gold.
No, but there is I don't know if he mentions it, but there are other authors that mention using the subdued candlesticks for Lent and Holy Week. Each candle required by the rubrics for the celebration of Mass should have its own individual candlestick. And I can't figure out what that means. But the candlesticks, I'm thinking of stuffing two into one candlestick. The candlestick should be alike in shape, material, and height, and indeed of such a height as to reach to the foot of the crucifix. This rubric presupposes that the crucifix and candlesticks are in the same plane. That means that they are, many times the candlesticks are one step up over the crucifix. But if they're in the same plane, in other words, if they're on the same level, then the crucifix should go higher than the candlesticks. The place for the candlesticks is on the altar itself and not on the wall near the altar. And I don't know what he means by that either. All right. In other words, you could have them on the reredos, you could have them on the gradine, but you can't have them off of what you would call the altar. In other words, you can't put them on the wall on either side or something like that of the altar. That's what I think he means by that. They need not necessarily be on the mensa. So you would have to have a pretty big mensa in order to put the big candlesticks up. Like St. Peter's Basilica doesn't have any gradines, and you see those enormous candlesticks, but the altar is enormous in St. Peter's Basilica. So they have room for that. It suffices that they are in the higher candle bar, which means one of the gradines. The candlesticks should be distributed equally on both sides of the crucifix. When 4 or 6 are used, arranged in an ascending order so that the two highest stand near the crucifix. Right, so I think I told you the Roman custom is to have ascending candlesticks where the candlesticks are a short, medium, and high. That's the Roman custom. But it need not be followed necessarily. So you will see a big crucifix here, and then the candles here, here, and here. And then they go down the other way too. And the candlestick is actually made smaller and proportionate. It's common in Rome. This rule need not be observed so strictly. The custom of placing all on the same level is permitted. The candlesticks are not blessed. Wobbelhorst. Relics, statues, flowers. The Ceremoniale Episcoporum, with few exceptions, sanctions the use of relics and statues of the saints and flowers on the altar. The altar should be free from all decorations when a Requiem Mass is celebrated. So you can't have flowers, you can't have relics on the altar for a Requiem Mass. It should be very stark. All right. The altar should be free. Okay. No relics or images of the saints are to be exposed publicly on the altar when the Blessed Sacrament is publicly exposed on the altar for the veneration of the faithful. So that means exposition. It doesn't mean that you have to cover them up during the Mass, as some priests think. There's when the Blessed Sacrament is present on the altar. I know a priest that would have people go do this as he's going through the first part of the canon, and that's not necessary. Exposition means monstrance. So you have to take the relics off. And I've seen authors say also that you would cover the statues in white for exposition. That doesn't mean benediction, though. You should cover the relics for benediction, but you would remove the relics for exposition and cover it's suggested, I mean, it's not a rule, to cover the statues in white. The idea being that the Blessed Sacrament is the sole object of adoration. No relics or during Advent and Lent, with the exception of Gaudete and Laetare Sundays, no flowers should be placed on the altar. He does mention later, another author mentions the Vigil of Christmas is permitted. We'll see another author say. But you don't put as many flowers on as you do for Christmas. It's a subdued. It's like half and half vigil, festive, Yes.
Since some things are custom, what about organ during Advent and Lent?
We'll talk about that, but you can use it only for accompaniment, and you can accompany big pieces like polyphonic pieces and things like that, but you can't have organ solo like for entrances and things like that, like the Prince of Denmark March and various other Bach, whatever. You can't do that. You can't use it for fill-ins during the offertory, and as is commonly done in high masses. So it has to be silent that way, but you can use it for accompaniment, except during the sacred Triduum. If I were the Pope, I would permit it, because it seems to me that should be the nicest music in the whole year, and it is very difficult for people to sing Gregorian chant without accompaniment. So, if I'm elected, I will change that. All right, that's one of my campaign promises. All right, but it is strictly forbidden. Now, I'm not sure if it includes all instruments, though. It says organ. And I'd like to determine that if it excludes other instruments, because maybe you could have other instruments. Company. The law is the law. So we'll see. But you'd have to get the exact text. Okay. Altar linens. The altar linens must be made from flax or hemp, so that means linen, and from no other materials. So there's a lot of synthetics out there and a lot of linen blends. Those are forbidden. The linen has a mystical sense of the shroud. So that's why all of the albs, amice, everything has to be pure linen. The number of altar linens required is 3. The 2 lower linens may be one piece doubled, which is very common. So you make a big long piece and then you fold it over. And that has to go to the edges when it's folded over. Or you could have 2 separate ones and it goes to the edges of the altar. Then the top one goes down and to the floor, but obviously it should be about an inch off the floor. The altar linen should cover the entire mensa. The upper linen should extend over the ends of the mensa to the floor. That's the top one. Only those parts of the upper linen which extend over the ends of the mensa may be ornamented with figures representing crosses, chalices, ostensoria, the sacred host, and such like. The material used in the decoration must be linen. So you can't put ornamentation, that means on the undercloths. The altar linens must be blessed by the bishop. Again, you see the bishop has control over that. Or by one having required faculties, which they commonly gave, before they may be used. A priest who has the faculties uses the formula contained in the Roman Missal or the Roman ritual. The formula as it stands should be used when one or more are blessed. The altar cards. The Rubricae Generales prescribe but one altar card to be placed ad pedem crucis. So only the middle one is prescribed. That means is foreseen in the middle of the altar on the mensa. But the use of the 2 altar cards is not prescribed, but custom has it thus. And that's been a custom for a long, long time. I mean, you see altar cards from the 18th century. All 3. The altar cards must be printed with the approbation of the local ordinary, which you do ordinarily see on those. So if you're making your own on the computer, which is possible, make sure that the texts are absolutely correct. The altar cards are not allowed on the altar during the exposition of the Blessed Sacrament, nor during the 40 hours devotion, nor for any other reason except for the celebration of Mass. After the celebration of Mass, the altar cards are not to be left on the altar for the sake of ornamentation or accommodation, but are to be placed on the credence or in the sacristy. Many times they would be placed under the vesperale, so you can see the altar cards. Let's see. The vesperale is the cloth that goes over the altar when it's not being used. It's known as the vesperale, meaning the afternoon thing. But, through a certain, we might say, laziness, the sacristans would just put them down on the altar, then put the vesperale over it. You can't do that. Yes.
I've been doing that since I came here. I didn't know that.
Well, you're wrong.
I think the altar cards at the side chapel should look permanently up on the altar, so I don't think any of us.
Yeah, you have to take them down. You gotta take them down.
It's good to know that.
Yes.
What was the permissible custom, Your Excellency? Placing them on top of the vesperale?
No. In other words, you have to take them off the altar. But it was, I don't know if you could call it a custom, but it was an activity. to just put them down on the altar and then cover them up. Yeah.
So this is clearly custom, contrary to law. It should persist.
It's just universal.
You've been doing it for a long time, right? No, it might get that. It might achieve that because that has been commonly done. It doesn't look very good.
That's true.
It's the lazy man's way of doing it. Okay. That's Venderstappen. The missile stand, the Rubricae Generales, prescribe a cushion as a support for the missile. In case a cushion is used, it should be of the same material and color as that of the vestments. In place of a cushion or stand which is made of metal or wood, may be used. It should be covered with a veil of the same color and material as that of the vestments. But you have to get somebody to sew that up. There's not a lot of those people around. If it is made of silver or wood beautifully carved, it need not be covered. I don't think we have any of that. A missal must be on the altar during the celebration of Mass. If you haven't figured that out, that's dehert. That's another one. That's another dehert. Another rubricist. Very good. Only those missals which are published in accordance with the decrees contained in the apostolic constitutions are permitted. So it has to be an approved missal, obviously. That missal is to be used which is proper to the church or oratory in which Mass is celebrated. The rites, however, which are peculiar to the orders are not observed. So you don't do the Dominican rite unless you're a Dominican. So if you're in a Dominican church, you use the Roman rite. The credence. On the floor of the sanctuary near the epistle side of the altar, a small table should be prepared. The top is to be covered with a white cloth. For more solemn festivities, the table is replaced with a credence. Notice this, a table larger in size than used on ordinary days. Probably for the, when you're setting out for solemn Mass, you put there's so many things that have to go on it. The credence should be covered with a white clean cloth which extends all around to the floor. So it has to come down all the way to the floor, but not the table. So he's distinguishing between the credence, which is the big long thing, and the table, which is the short thing that is used every day. So that just needs a white cloth on the top of it. The cruets, basin, and finger towel and bell should be placed on the table or credence. The rubrics call for 2 cruets, one for the wine and the other for the water. They should be made of glass or crystal. Cruets made of gold or silver may be tolerated. Okay. A glass basin, oval in shape, is preferable for the reasons that it is more easily handled and kept clean. That's what you pour into. Concerning the material and decorations of the basin, the rubrics are silent. But it has to be something that is decent, obviously. The use of an extra basin and cruet for washing the fingers is not allowed except to certain prelates. The finger towel should be clean. From this we conclude that the celebrant is to be supplied with a clean towel each time he offers the holy sacrifice. The Europeans tend to be a little lax on that stuff. The Americans will change purificators every day. Not in Europe. They'll go a whole week on one purificator. So I suggest if you're a priest and you do go to Europe, bring your own stuff. The bell, number 106, used at Mass should be a little bell. This conclusion is deduced from the terminology used in the Rubricae Generales, etc. In the passages referred to, the words tintinabulum and campanula are used, which means little bell. The bell may be made of silver or brass and ornamented with sacred symbols. Figures. Chimes do not seem to be out of harmony with the requirements of the rubrics. The chimes equals a cluster of little bells rung at once. That's what we commonly use. Gongs are forbidden. Now, what a gong is not entirely clear. Does that mean an oriental gong, that hangs like a bang? Or does it refer to one of those things that you hit with a hammer that are round? Those, you see those commonly. I mean, those are at any of the dealers of liturgical goods from yesteryear. Those are quite common. So they must have been used. I don't know, have you ever seen one of those?
I think you bought one and brought it here.
I think I left it there. Do we have it?
You brought one of those here, and Father Bear was going to record the noise and use it for the speakers.
But that's right. We do have one. Yeah, it's they cost a lot of money. There's a stand down here, and then you have this, and then this. It could be just one, or it could be a 3 up in it, and you hit it with a little hammer. And I remember those being used when I was young, 100 years ago. You would hear those dun, 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 dun. They would have a special intonation for the elevation and everything. The priests generally don't like them. So gong. Yes.
Maybe the Jesuits in China asked me to
I don't know, but they're not in common use. But I know there's a man out in Pittsburgh that I think he wants $1,200 for one of those things. Not worth it. And getting an altar boy to use it properly might be a big problem too. The bell is to be rung at all masses, even when celebrated in a private oratory or when only the celebrant and servant are present. So you can't dispense with it when you have a private mass. To this rule are the following exceptions: 1, from the Gloria of the Mass on Holy Thursday to that of the Mass on Holy Saturday. So there's no bells at all, not even, you shut off the bell system in the seminary, and you use a clapper to warn people of something that's going on. No bells at all during that sacred Triduum from the Gloria of Holy Thursday to the Gloria of Holy Saturday. The rubrics say nothing about the use of a crotalus, that is the clacker. They're silent, but it is the custom to use that clacker, that wooden clacker, for the elevation on Good Friday, and for the procession to the altar of repose. 2, during the exposition of the Blessed Sacrament, although Mass is celebrated at a side altar, so you don't ring the bells when the Mass is Coram Sanctissima. Three, while the choir is reciting the divine office, Mass should not be celebrated at the choir altar during the office. Could you imagine that? The above rule refers to Masses celebrated out of view of the choir. So if, say, Vespers is going on and you're in a church with side altars, you should not ring the bell if Vespers is going on in the middle of it, in the sanctuary. During the time of pious supplication, for example, during a procession in the church. However, the big bell, if you have a bell tower, that is rung during a procession outside, commonly. If you have a bell tower, but not the little bells. With the exception of those instances mentioned under M, number 110, the bell should be rung at the sanctus, at the elevation of both the host and the chalice. The custom of ringing the bell at the offertory, the Hankigitur, and the Domini non sum dignus may be retained. Some people go crazy with bells. It sounds like the good humor man. And so, some ring the bell when the priest lifts the veil off the chalice. That was the moment where the offertory was considered to start, and when you missed Mass. Because if you got in after that, so that bell would ring, that means if you got in after that bell, you had to stay for the next Mass to fulfill your Sunday obligation. That was probably the reason for it. So people would know when the offertory was started. Then, so some do that. Some ring the bell at the minor elevation, right at the end of the canon. It's custom. All that bell business is by custom. But some people, I think, go crazy with the bells. So I don't see really a reason for ringing it at the end of the canon, because you're not going to do anything different. You can see the reason for it ringing it at the beginning of the offertory. But at the end of the canon, I mean, you can't even see the elevation. So anyway, but you should, when you're in Rome, do as the Romans. And there's, if you go into somebody else's church and they're ringing bells, just do what they do. Don't say anything. A lot of different customs. Images. Now this is from Augustine. Images or statues may also be used to ornament the altar to incite the faithful to devotion and veneration. The Code of Canon Law says only those servants of God may be publicly worshipped who are counted among the saints and blessed by the authority of the Church. So you can put up blesseds. We have Blessed Innocent the 11th in the back. Unusual pictures and images may not be exposed in churches or sacred places, including those of exempt religious. In other words, the people who are exempt, that means Dominicans, Jesuits, exempt from the episcopal authority, but they come under this for episcopal authority, unless the approval of the local ordinary has been obtained. So the local ordinary, again, has control over everything. The ordinaries shall never allow any sacred images to be publicly exhibited to the veneration of the faithful, unless these images are in keeping with the approved usage of the Church. So nothing bizarre, nothing that is out of the ordinary, or some odd thing is not approved. An unusual image is one that represents persons or events in a manner which has no justification either in Holy Writ, or that means sacred scripture, or in tradition. Thus, to represent the Holy Ghost in the form of a young man has never been sanctioned, but rather reprobated by the Church. The Blessed Trinity may not be represented by a man with 3 heads. That was done in California in the missions because the Indians just couldn't figure it out. But you could see it in some of those missions, the 3 heads. Or by a man with 2 heads and a dove between them. I never saw that. Pictures of the Sacred Heart of Jesus representing the heart alone without the rest of the body are not allowed to be publicly exhibited on altars, but may be used for private devotion. Now that has been violated a lot. The title Cor Jesu Eucharisticum is neither canonical nor liturgical, and hence no pictures of it may be exhibited to the veneration of the faithful. However, remember this book is 1930s. That may have been approved later. You see books about that and everything. I'm not too sure about that. The ordinary shall never permit the exhibition in churches or sacred places of images which offend against dogma or decency or propriety, or which are apt to lead the ignorant into error. So you'll have to be watchful about those things. Many times people put out holy cards, and you have to look at your church after the people are gone. They like to leave things out, and you have to look at your bookstore too, because people leave things in the bookstore about their favorite apparitions or something. Go in and throw stuff out. Flowers. Flowers, green twigs, or plants, and also artificial flowers made of silk, which are impossible to get, but cloth flowers, and placed in vases may be put on the altar. They must be removed during Advent and Lent, except Gaudete and Laetare Sundays, Holy Thursday, Holy Saturday, and the Vigil of Christmas. It is also permitted to have flowers on the altar during the month of March, though it falls within the Lenten season, in honor of St. Joseph, or on account of the First Communion of children. The sanctuary lamp. For this lamp, olive oil or beeswax should be used. If no olive oil is available, other oils may be used according to the prudent judgment of the ordinary, but they should be vegetable oils if possible. The sanctuary lamp must not serve any other purposes, for instance, illuminating a dormitory. Well, don't forget, this is an old book. The lamp may be attached to the side wall like a bracket or cornucopia, provided that the light burns towards and before the altar, infra et ante altare. Olive oil best serves the mystic significance of the sanctuary lamp as expressed in the liturgy of Palm Sunday. However, beeswax, the significance of which is pointed out on Candlemas Day, is also permitted. So too is a mixture of olive oil and beeswax. Vegetable oil may be used where olive oil cannot be had. Music. The language proper to the church is Latin. Hence, it is forbidden to sing anything whatever in the vernacular at solemn liturgical functions. So in a solemn mass, or I think you would extend that to Missa Cantata, you cannot sing anything vernacular during the Mass. Before the Mass, you can sing it. After the Mass, you can sing it, but not during. Much more to sing in the vernacular or the variable or common parts of the Mass and office. So that would be awful. As the texts may be rendered in music and the order in which they may be rendered are determined for every liturgical function, it is not lawful to confuse this order or to change the prescribed texts or others selected at will, or to omit them either entirely or in part, except when the rubrics allow that some versicles of the text be supplied with the organ, while these versicles are simply recited in choir. So it was not unusual for the Te Deum to sing the first verse, and then the organ does the second verse without any singing, and then the choir does the third, and so forth. The organ does the fourth. That's permitted, actually. I think it sounds weird, but it is permitted. I have it on recordings. Why don't you just sing it?